Almost 2,000 years ago, the Bay of Naples glittered like a sheet of hammered bronze beneath the Mediterranean sun. Fishing boats bobbed lazily, vines gleamed silver-green on terraced slopes, and the Roman resort town of Pompeii pulsed with life. Its wine merchants haggling in the forum, its bathhouses echoing with laughter, its frescoed villas perfumed by roses in full bloom. Above it all loomed a dark, symmetrical mountain locals called simply Mons. It was a faithful guardian, they said, a giver of fertile soil and sweet grapes, a landmark for ships threading the Tyrrhenian Sea. But on one ordinary August morning in 79 CE, that guardian split open. What followed was not a single explosion, but a slow, unrelenting nightmare, a pillar of ash rising miles into the sky, pumice stones clattering like hail on roof tiles, midday darkness pierced by lightning crackling inside the cloud, and at last a roaring avalanche of fire and poison that buried every street, every prayer, every half-finished conversation under a suffocating tide of ash. Pompeii was silenced in a single day, yet in that very silence the town would achieve a strange sort of immortality. For nearly 17 centuries it slept, entombed and forgotten, while empires rose and fell overhead. When Bourbon tunnels finally broke into its petrified houses in the 18th century, candlelight revealed a world frozen in its final heartbeat, loaves still in ovens, dogs still chained at the door, frescoes still glowing with Venus's blush. Scholars, adventurers, and looters alike descended, each chasing the same question. What was it truly like to live and to die on the edge of Vesuvius? This is the story of Pompeii, of an Eden built on borrowed time, and a catastrophe that turned life to legend. Tonight, join our journey through marbled atria and crowded taverns, past vineyards ripening under a deceptive sky, to the very moment the mountain's heart gave way. We will walk street by street, hour by hour, from the town's humble Oscan beginnings to the rediscovery that astonished the modern world, and ask why the echo of Pompeii still grips our imagination 2 millennia later. Just before sunrise, the Bay of Naples shines like beaten bronze. Fishing boats drift in the hush. Vineyard leaves, still wet with dew, tremble on the soft breath rolling down Mount Vesuvius. In the streets of Pompeii, bakers lift hot loaves from dome-shaped ovens, mule carts creak toward the forum, and everywhere the mountain watches, silent, symmetrical, seemingly benign. Roman agronomists swore that no vineyards in Italy equaled those on Vesuvius's slopes. Modern vintners agree. Analyses show ash-rich soil laced with potassium and phosphorus, porous enough to drain winter rains, yet spongy enough to keep summer vines from wilting. Trellises called arbustum, grapevines trained up living poplar poles, striped the fields, each row ending in an amphora-shaped winepress. Falernian reds and pale Vesuvinum whites left the port in clay jars, stamped Pompeii to taverns as far away as Cologne and Antioch. Pompeii perched on a lava spur overlooking the Sarno River. In antiquity, the river was deep and sluggish, its mouth widening into marshy lagoons that sheltered Phoenician, Etruscan, then Roman hulls. From this key timber, garum, wool, and wine departed. Syrian glass, Egyptian papyrus, and Cilician saffron arrived. The basalt Via Appia carried travellers north to Rome in 3 hard days, while the coastal Via Domitiana threaded south past oyster farms and seaside villas. Commercial tablets list spring convoys of 10,000 amphorae, evidence of a trade network throbbing with almost modern rhythm. On the eve of disaster, about 12,000 people lived inside Pompeii's walls and nearly as many in the surrounding countryside. In the forum, one could hear Oscan peasants bargaining in their native tongue, freedmen from Tyre advertising purple dye in Greek, and Roman senators dictating letters home in polished Latin. Around them rose marble facades financed by shipping profits, the basilica where magistrates judged contracts, the richly painted Macellum market, the amphitheatre seating 20,000 roaring fans, oldest of its kind in the empire. Why was the land so fruitful? Because the African plate slides beneath the Eurasian here, melting rock into gas-charged magma that feeds the Campanian volcanic arc. Yet Vesuvius had not erupted for 7 centuries. Poets called it vine-clad, its crater filled with gardens. Farmers quarried soft yellow tuff for construction, fullers ground pumice to scour togas, household shrines to Vulcan, and the mountain's hidden lairies took token offerings of honey cakes, insurance rather than fear. Excavation shows lavish plenty. Mosaic floors of the Casa dei Veti depict overflowing cornucopias. A wall painting of Priapus weighs his prodigious member against a purse of gold, comic proof that commerce trumped lineage. But inequality lay under the frescoes. Nearly 40% of residents were enslaved or recently freed, their labor powering villas they would never own. On 5th February 62, a violent earthquake shattered temples, cracked aqueduct arches, and toppled house walls. Rebuilding began at once, scaffolds sprouting like wooden forests around half-repaired columns. Seneca wrote essays on subterranean winds. Still, merchants invested, baths reopened, and new tavern graffiti proclaimed Campania Felix, Campania the Lucky. Looking back, geologists can read the warnings: swelling ground, poisonous springs, clusters of tremors. But Pompeians saw only wealth, vines heavy with August grapes, fig trees sagging under fruit, ships' masts bristling at the dock. When the earth quivered lightly on 23rd August 79 CE, someone likely muttered, "Just another aftershock." Within 48 hours, paradise would pay its debt to the mountain. For now, dusk settles over peristyle gardens, the air scented with roses and fermenting must, and Pompeii hums, unaware that every step it takes is across a crust of powder-fine ash. Long before marble porticos mirrored Vesuvius in polished basins, the site of Pompeii was a rugged Oscan hamlet perched on a lava spur above the Sarno River. Its earliest streets were little more than footpaths etched into volcanic dust, its houses huts of wood and thatch, its gods rustic spirits of spring water and fertile earth. No senators strolled these lanes, no imported silk shimmered in the sun. Yet even in this rough infancy, destiny was already whispering through the vines. Sometime in the 7th century BCE, clans speaking Oscan, a cousin tongue to Latin, claimed the plateau. They built crude dry stone walls and terraced the slopes for millet and broad beans. Their settlement, perhaps called Pompeii after a local clan, Pompeii means 5 in Oscan, hinting at a confederation of families, owed its existence to 2 blessings: fresh water bubbling from the foothills and an easy crossing of the Sarno where it widened into marsh. Traders moving timber downriver from inland forests stopped here, exchanging planks for salt and fish. The village prospered quietly, insulated from the rivalries of greater powers, until the sea brought newcomers. Greek mariners from Cumae were first. By the late 6th century BCE, they had already sprinkled their alphabet and their wine-dark amphorae along the Campanian coast. They coveted Pompeii's harbour and its outrider settlement at the mouth of the river, so they laid out a trading post, part emporium, part lookout, bringing olive oil, black-glazed pottery, and tales of sea gods no Oscan had heard. The Etruscans followed, sweeping south from their northern strongholds. Master engineers, they fortified the headland with a tufa wall and paved a new road toward Nuceria in the east. Under their hand, the humble hamlet began to look like a town. Rectangular blocks replaced haphazard huts, a small forum appeared near the highest ground, and artisans set up kilns to fire roof tiles hard enough to shrug off winter rain. Yet neither Greeks nor Etruscans would hold Campania alone. In 474 BCE, a fleet from Syracuse smashed Etruscan naval power, and the tides of influence shifted again. For Pompeii, this constant turnover was less invasion than evolution. Each culture left behind a stratum, letters, deities, masonry, layered like pumice deposits on Vesuvius's sides. By the 5th century BCE, Highland Samnites, warlike shepherds famed for bronze helmets cresting like rooster combs, poured down the valleys. They seized Pompeii, drove Oscan deeper into daily speech, and surrounded the plateau with stout, polygonal ramparts. These walls, 7 meters thick in places, signaled that Pompeii was no mere farm village now, it was a prize to defend. Inside, Samnite magistrates refurbished the forum, raised a Doric temple to Apollo, and laid out a rectilinear street grid still visible today. They encouraged trades that thrived on fertile soil: vintners, wool fullers, olive presses. The town swelled to perhaps 8,000 souls, a patchwork of Oscan farmers, Hellenized merchants, and Samnite aristocrats wearing the striped togas of their order. Yet peace never had long tenure in Campania. Rome, expanding like a vineyard root through soil, noticed the volcanic plain and coveted its grain and wine. The clash was inevitable. In 91 BCE, Italian allies rose against the Republic, demanding citizenship. Pompeii, staunchly Samnite, flung in its lot with the rebels. Siege engines soon battered the walls. Sulla's legion stormed through the Stabian Gate, and when the smoke cleared, Rome annexed the city, rechristening it Colonia Cornelia Veneria Pompeianorum, a mouthful proclaiming that Venus, Sulla's patroness, now watched these streets. With Roman conquest came a deluge of culture and capital. Veterans received fertile plots outside the walls. New baths, a palaestra, and an amphitheatre, the earliest stone arena in the Roman world, sprang up as symbols of civic pride. Latin edged out Oscan in graffiti. Wealthy senators from the capital discovered Campania's mild winters and leased seaside estates at nearby Stabii and Oplontis, sailing over to Pompeii's markets for shellfish, perfume, and exotic parrots. By the reign of Augustus, Pompeii had evolved into a full-fledged resort town. Painted advertisements promised gladiator games and musical recitals. Taverns offered saffron-spiced boar and honey-drenched pastries. The suburban baths piped in heated seawater for patrons who fancied pretending they still swam in the bay, while winter winds lashed the shore. Real estate speculation boomed. Freedmen enriched by the wine trade bought parcels of older aristocratic houses, knocking down party walls to create sprawling mansions with columned gardens, coloured marble floors, and triclinium dining rooms cooled by trickling fountains. In the Casa del Fauno, a bronze satyr danced amid mosaic patterns copied from Greek masters, proof that provincial life could equal the capital's luxury. And everywhere you looked, paint, vivid and unapologetic. Whole facades glowed crimson, sunflower yellow, or cobalt blue. Inside, frescoes leapt to life, gods flirting, heroes battling centaurs, silken-robed women lounging on ivory couches. In this riot of colour, Pompeii announced to every visitor, "Here, pleasure is a virtue, and every day is a festival." Amid such prosperity, it was easy to forget that the city's patroness, Venus, also bore an epithet no one said aloud: Veneria Vulcania, the Venus of volcanic fire. The same subterranean furnace that sweetened grapes and warmed bathhouse hippocausts had no loyalty. But in the soft candlelight of banquet halls, danger felt like a bedtime story for children. For now, Pompeii basked like a lizard on a sun-soaked rock, believing the heat beneath was merely the earth's benevolence. The mountain, meanwhile, waited, measuring its moments in centuries, not seasons. Step onto Pompeii's main drag, the Via dell'Abbondanza, and the city's heartbeat is commerce. Stone shopfronts line the road like teeth, each gap a doorway into clanging workshops, spice-scented taverns or wine bars whose counters glitter with coloured glass chips. Above the din floats a constant chorus of voices, Oscan bargainers haggling over olives, freedmen advertising fresh garum, Syrian merchants boasting of damask silk. Trade is not a side venture here. It is the very air Pompeians breathe. Every morning before first light, mule carts rumble in from countryside villae, heaped with amphorae of wine, baskets of figs and sacks of milled emmer. They funnel through the Nocera and Stabian gates toward the Forum, Pompeii's commercial heart. Butchers set out cuts of pork beneath marble slabs chilled by night air. Fishmongers sprinkle seawater over anchovies still twitching from the bay. A wool dealer from Nola unrolls bolts the colour of sunset. By mid-morning, the square thrums like a hive. Magistrates tally grain quotas, moneylenders click bronze tokens, and gossip, Pompeii's favourite currency, passes faster than coin. Branching from the Forum, paved streets serve as open-air malls. Shops are tiny, sometimes no wider than a doorway, yet each specialises with dazzling focus. One sells only bronze lamps, shaped like dolphins. Another, blue-green glassware blown in nearby workshops. A third, saffron and pepper, weighed on delicate steelyards. Painted signs make promises in bold red letters. Panis calidus fumans, bread hot and steaming, or Felix Venum, lucky wine, while graffiti reviews compete for space. Secundus says the garum from Umbricius beats all. If wine is Campania's lifeblood, garum is its perfume, a fish sauce so prized that locked storerooms guard amphorae like treasure. Southeast of town, the Casa dei Dioscuri hides bubbling vats where whole shoals of sardines ferment under August sun. Salt, time, and heat transform fish into a rosy liquor, coveted from Britannia to Judea. Dealers brand their jars with painted dolphins and ship them upriver before the sauce spoils. It is said a clever Pompeian could smell garum's salt-sweet musk a street away, and that fine dinner hosts would uncork a jar just to prove their status. Pompeii's prosperity rests on a triangle of transit routes. First, the Sarno River, slow, navigable, edged with wharves where stevedores unload Syrian glass, Egyptian papyrus, even Indian pepper, that has travelled the Red Sea and Nile. Second, the Via Appia and Via Domitiana, basalt ribbons linking the town to Rome and Capua, ensuring that amphorae of Falernian wine reach aristocratic tables in the capital within days. Third, the Tyrrhenian Sea itself. Merchantmen hug the Campanian coast, stopping at Pompeii's outport to swap Spanish lead for Campanian wool, Etruscan clay for Sorrentine olive oil. Because traffic never stops, Pompeii learns to keep pace. Warehouses called horea rise along the riverbank, their floors slope to drain spilled grain. Money changers set up wooden booths by the Forum's colonnade, exchanging Hispano-Celtic silver for Roman sesterces. Even the gods take a cut. Meticulous ledgers from the Temple of Apollo record tithes paid in wine and date honey. The city's trades are as varied as its voices. Fullers stomp wool in vats of lye and volcanic earth, whitening togas until steam curls from the cloth. Metal workers beat copper sheets into cauldrons, their hammers ringing like distant bells. In dim back rooms, perfumers grind rose petals, saffron, and cinnamon into pomades stored in alabaster jars no bigger than a thumb. Bakers operate day and night. Their lava stone mills grind flour, powered by mule or slave, and round loaves emerge stamped with identifying seals, quality control, in carbony brown crust. Yet wealth is not confined to owners alone. Skilled slaves can rent their talents, keeping a portion of profit. Freedmen often rise to head entire enterprises. On a single block, you might find a former slave running a dye workshop next to a Greek doctor advertising bone-setting services. Social mobility, while limited, remains tantalizingly possible, fuel for Pompeii's restless energy. When dusk paints the streets terracotta, the official stalls shutter, but commerce mutates rather than stops. Oil lamps flare, tabernets slide open latticed windows. Dice rattle on stone counters where cheap wine spills like vinegar. A retired centurion hawks Spanish olives pickled with fennel. A woman in a saffron shawl offers love charms and powdered aphrodisiacs. Beneath the amphitheatre's outer arches, black market dealers sell smuggled silks, amber beads, even pilfered temple silver, knowing watchmen prefer a bribe to a brawl. All of it, the garum vats, the wine presses, the humming markets, depends on networks that stretch far beyond the city walls. But those networks are delicate as spider silk. A storm in the Strait of Messina can delay grain ships. A slave revolt in Sicily can starve dye workshops of indigo. Most fragile of all is the quiet mountain under which Pompeii thrives. Should Vesuvius ever close the river mouth with ash or choke the roads with pumice, every shop shutter would slam down at once. For now, though, the city hums and clinks and bargains into the warm night. Oil lamps flicker on frescoed walls, coins pass from palm to palm, and a garum dealer counts tomorrow's profits by the sweet, salty fumes rolling off his vats, utterly convinced that Pompeii's good fortune runs as deep as the Sarno itself. Push open the heavy wooden door of a Pompeian house, and you step off the noisy street into another universe, one of murmuring fountains, sun-struck frescoes, and shadows that smell of bay leaf and lamp oil. The city may roar beyond the lintel, but here a family's world unfolds in rooms sequenced like acts of a private play. The first impression is power. A black and white mosaic dog snarls at your sandal straps, cave, canem, reminding visitors to respect the household's boundaries. Slaves have sprinkled the threshold with water to hold down dust. The marble curb still glistens. On market days, clients queue here at dawn to pay respects to their patron. Scribes keep tally tablets beside the door. Beyond the short entry corridor, the house opens into its lungs, the atrium. Sunlight pours through a square hole in the roof, compluvium striking a matching basin, impluvium, where rainwater collects for cooking, washing, and the occasional reflective pause. Bronze lamps dangle from chains, their soot curling up toward painted rafters. On feast days, garlands of myrtle drape those chains like green serpents. Around the atrium lie doorways to tiny cubicular, windowless bedrooms. By dawn, a maid has folded straw mattresses, swept stray pumice dust, and freshened the cedarwood chests, holding togas and stole. In one corner stands a money changer's strongbox. Another holds wax tablets, showing last night's dice score, abandoned in sudden sleep. Opposite the entrance, framed by cedar doorposts, sits the tablinum, half office, half throne room. Here the paterfamilias reads shipping invoices, seals contracts, and receives petitioners. Shelves display wax busts of ancestors. A young clerk records every conversation on portable tablets. Through the open back curtain, lemon trees in the peristyle shimmer, reminding even the sternest debtor that this house is prosperous. Flanking the tablinum are two recessed bays where family trophies glow in lamplight, an Amazon-headed bronze shield from a Samnite grandfather, silver cups won at a Neapolitan poetry contest, a child's lead bulla hung on the day she survived her first fever. In these side chapels, the past peers silently at the present. Step across a mosaic threshold, swallows darting after flies, and you reach the peristyle, a courtyard ringed by fluted columns, each drum splashed with vermilion. Low hedges trace knot designs, box-cut topiaries guard terracotta herms, roses erupt in crimson bursts beside mellow statues of Dionysus and a drunken satyr spilling wine. A slave girl sweeps fallen petals into copper basins, while her younger brother coaxes songbirds with a reed whistle. In summer afternoons, family and guests drift here, sipping chilled melon wine beneath awnings dyed Tyrian purple. When the bronze gong rings in late afternoon, diners recline on 3 couches around a low table, burnished smooth by decades of cups. The walls flare with fourth-style frescoes. Hercules wrestles the Nemean lion. Delicate architectural fantasies open illusory windows to impossible palaces. Silver platters arrive, whitebait in garum, quails stuffed with figs, honey cakes shaped like pine cones. Between courses, a servant sprinkles saffron water onto the mosaic floor, releasing a breath of exotic perfume. Tucked beneath the stair, or sometimes set proudly, at the garden colonnade, stands the Lararium, a painted miniature temple. 2 guardian lares raise drinking horns beside a central genius figure. Coiled serpents slither along the base, symbols of protection and fertility. Each dawn, the house steward dots the altar with wine and incense. On birthdays, he crowns it with fresh roses and a pinch of salted flour. Heat, clatter, and laughter swirl in the culina. Bronze pots hiss over charcoal braziers, a mortar crunches peppercorns and silphium, a scullion fans embers with a goose wing. Beside the storeroom, jars of olive oil sit shoulder to shoulder with amphorae of fish sauce, and a wall niche hides household odds, broken lamp wicks, a child's rag doll, a lost earring waiting to be claimed. Cramped slave quarters guard the rear gate, straw pallets, a shared oil lamp, and the day's gossip, who smiled at whom, who earned a coin for extra duty, compose their universe. Yet even here, a faded fresco of Fortuna clings to plaster. Hope proves hard to extinguish. As dusk deepens, shadows pool in the atrium. Lamps glow saffron against red walls. The impluvium mirror turns obsidian, flickering with torchlight reflections. From the peristyle comes the damp whisper of fountain water, the sweet decay of jasmine. Doors bolt, shutters latch, and somewhere beneath the floor, a dormouse rustles in its jar, fattening for a winter that will never come. Outside, Vesuvius broods in the darkness. Inside, life continues, a tapestry of whispered devotions, simmering stews, small ambitions and painted myths. No one here imagines that within a single violent day, every fresco, every rose bush, every child's chalk game scrawled on the threshold will freeze forever beneath a blanket of ash. But that sorrow belongs to chapters still to come. For tonight, the domus breathes warm and self-contained, a fragile world behind lava-red walls. As Vesuvius glows red in the last sweep of sunset, Pompeii undergoes a daily alchemy. The marketplace's clamour subsides, oil lamps flare, and the city's pulse slips from commerce into pure indulgence. Here, pleasure is not a diversion. It is a civic virtue, a ritual as carefully observed as any temple rite. The baths are first stop for nearly everyone. At dawn, the great bronze doors of the Stabian complex swing open. By late afternoon, steam curls from tiled roofs like incense offerings to Hygeia. Inside, seasons vanish. A frigidarium dome traps cool shadow, its marble basin shivering with spring water. Step next into the tepidarium. Walls the color of ripe peaches radiate a gentle warmth. Bronze braziers hiss with perfumed oil. Finally, the caldarium, hell in miniature. Hypercaust fires roar beneath the floor, hot air rises through clay flues, and bathers' sweat rivers beneath stucco vaults studded with glass mosaics of dolphins and tridents. But cleansing is only pretext. Deals clot here in whispers, and gossip flows thicker than steam. Senators unroll tablets to finalize shipping contracts. Gladiator agents negotiate purses for upcoming bouts. A barber trims a wool merchant's beard while reciting the latest scandal from the suburban brothel district. Rich and poor alike pay the small entrance fee, for in the baths all citizens are theoretically equal, though a senator's slave always waits nearby with ivory comb and emerald-stoppered unguent jar. At the eastern edge of town squats a structure older than Rome's Colosseum, a stone amphitheatre that can swallow 20,000 throats. Arrive on Games Day, and the air crackles with salted peanuts, saffron buns, and expectation. Trumpets blare, painted banners of rival cities, Nuceria blue, Pompeii crimson, snap in the sea breeze. Down in the arena sand, gladiators bow to the podium. A retiarius whirls his net, silver weights flashing like minnows. A secutor lowers his visor, shield gleaming under the sun. Bets fly, bronze coins, onyx rings, even a year's supply of garum, while spectators roar approval or hiss contempt. When the final blow lands and viscera darken the dust, judgment falls to the editor of the games. A thumb's flick decides life or oblivion. Crowd fury once boiled so hot it spilled outside the walls. A notorious riot in 59 CE forced Rome to close the amphitheatre for a decade. Yet passion returned the moment the ban lifted. Pompeii's appetite for spectacle is not confined to stone arenas. Roving actors set up curtained carts in side streets, declaiming bawdy farces by torchlight. In taverns, Syrian musicians pluck lutes, while girls in spangled tunics spin between low tables. Even shrines embrace showmanship. On festival nights, youths in goat masks reenact Dionysus' merry triumph, tossing dates to children who giggle and chase them under moonlit porticos. After dark, the Vicolo dei Sopranomi, alley of nicknames, vibrates with revelry. Patrons crowd marble counters in thermopolia, slurping bean stew ladled from terracotta jars sunk into the stone. A dice game erupts, bone cubes clatter, curses rise, and a one-eyed ex-legionary whoops at a lucky throw. Farther along, discreet lanterns mark the doorway of the Venus in a shell brothel. Frescoes inside leave no misunderstandings, and price lists are etched beside each room like menu boards. For the right fee, a gladiator fresh from triumph might lend his fame to private celebration, blade laid aside for an hour's softer combat. On high holidays, Saturnalia in December, the Venalia wine feast in August, the entire timetable dissolves. Masters serve slaves, debts are pardoned for a day, garlands crown even the stray dogs. Processions snake through streets heavy with incense. A white bull crowned in ivy is led toward the temple of Jupiter. Amphorae of new wine are cracked as freely as conversation. The earth itself seems to join in, hot springs bubbling more vigorously, the mountains' flanks glowing a deeper purple at dusk. From steamy baths to blood-slick sand, from torchlit alley to perfumed dining couch, Pompeii's pleasures weave a spell of permanence. The mountain has been silent for centuries. The wine flows unending. The spectacles renew themselves with braided certainty. Why suspect that tomorrow's games might never be played, tomorrow's bathwater never heated? Tonight, laughter ricochets beneath vaulted ceilings, cymbals clash, and the amphitheatre's sand still smells of iron and roses. Vesuvius, obscured against the starry sky, listens in silence as a city celebrates on the very brink of oblivion. If you had asked a Pompeian where the gods lived, you would have received two answers at once. Everywhere and right here. The divine spilled across public squares, lounged in private gardens, and smouldered under the mountain's crust. In this city, faith was not a Sunday garment, it was stitched into every hour. Bread baked for the Lares at dawn, incense for Venus at noon, a whispered prayer to Vulcan whenever the ground shook. Morning begins at the Lararium, a painted niche beside the kitchen hearth. Two miniature gods, the Lares, raise tiny wine cups beside a coiled serpent that promises fertility if well fed. The steward sprinkles salt and dribbles rough wine into a bronze saucer. A flicker of flame carries the scent heavenward. Children watch wide-eyed. These are the spirits who guard doorposts, dining tables, even the dog chained in the courtyard. Forget their offering and a pot may crack, a loaf may burn, or worse, a merchant contract might sour. Step into the forum and marble columns frame the temple of Venus Pompeiana. Her cult winds back to the city's refounding under Sulla. She is both mother and mascot, depicted here not as coy lover, but as stately matron, robed and crowned, flanked by winged cupids. Newlywed couples leave goose egg offerings for fertility. Sea captains promise golden shells if their ships return unbroken. At dusk, the statue's polished bronze seems to blush, catching the last red of Vesuvius's slopes, an omen read as affection, never warning. Across the forum stands the Temple of Apollo, its ionic columns half embracing an open sky. Here Greek rhythm mingles with Italic prayer, a bronze Apollo strides with lyre aloft, and a poised Diana once mirrored him before thieves spirited the statue away. Beside these mainstream deities thrive foreign faiths. At the temple of Isis, painted priests pour Nile water over devotees. In the back streets, Anatolian Taurobolian pits wait for blood baptisms to the Great Mother, Magna Mater. Pompeii, port city of all luxuries, is equally a harbour of every god that sails in with the cargo. Yet no sanctuary draws more wary reverence than those facing Mons, the mountain. Some villagers call it the seat of Vulcan. Others whisper an older name, Soma, and leave black poppy wreaths at cave mouths. After the great earthquake of 62 CE, magistrates renewed vows to the spirit of Vesuvius, sacrificing white bulls whose blood steamed on altars of warm pumice. Marble tablets record a special festival, the Vulcanalia, where crowds cast small fish and living eels into bonfires, begging the god to vent his anger upwards, not sideways. Diviners flourish. A haruspex opens a lamb by moonlight, reading crimson loaves for hints of safe voyages. Augurs climb rooftops at dawn, tracing bird flight patterns against a sky that smells faintly of sulphur. Even the marketplace trusts these signs. A shipment of figs delayed by contrary omens fetches double price on arrival, for risk warrants reward. Faith feeds commerce, and commerce funds faith, a loop as tight as a priest's knot on the temple purse. Still anxiety hums beneath devotion. Minor quakes rattle roof tiles, hot springs near the suburban baths hiss louder each year. Some priests urge greater gifts, philosophers mutter about subterranean fires, yet the city's pleasures drown caution. A new statue, a grander altar, a brighter fresco, surely such honours will keep disaster at bay. When twilight cools the streets, torches kindle before every shrine. The mingled scents of myrrh, roasting goat and jasmine drift upward, as if the entire town were a single incense boat launched toward the stars. On a balcony, a mother touches her infant's forehead with olive oil, whispering, "Lares, keep him through the night." In the amphitheatre, Gladiators traced tiny cross-shaped marks to Nemesis on the sand before battle. Even thieves paused to tip a copper coin into Mercury's street-side alcove, protection money to the god of sly pursuits. High above, Vesuvius looms, its summit a dark fin against a field of constellations. No temple crowns that peak, no priest dares live there. Yet every prayer circles it, every offering courts its mercy. The people of Pompeii have built their city on faith as much as on stone, certain that gods of hearth and sky will guard them. But one deity, the one beneath their feet, has never accepted benign worship. He is a god of pressure and silence, waiting for the moment when incense and bulls are no longer enough. At first, the warnings were gentle, mere shivers underfoot, a tremble in a lamp flame, an unfamiliar breath of sulphur drifting across the vineyards. They arrived like furtive messengers, urgent but easily ignored, and Pompeii's citizens, busy with trade, games and gossip, learned to tuck each omen into the folds of daily life. Yet beneath the frescoed walls the mountain's pulse was quickening, and every subtle sign was a syllable in a gathering prophecy. On a winter afternoon, the earth suddenly flexed its muscles. Roof tiles clattered down like hail, colonnades swayed, as if caught in wine sickness, marble gods toppled from temple pediments. When the rumbling stopped, dust clouds drifted over shattered porticos, and the forum lay crisscrossed by fresh fissures. Livestock bolted, wells ran muddy, and terrified citizens camped in gardens for days, shaking at every aftershock. But Campanian resilience was legendary. Within a month, scaffolding forested the skyline. Builders reinvented facades in new, fashionable stucco. Merchants reopened stalls beneath cracked arches. Artists painted over plaster scars with brighter pigments, as though colour itself could exorcise fear. To outsiders it seemed Pompeii had conquered the quake, yet those who lived through that afternoon spoke of a different victory. They had learned to live beside unease, to weave trembling ground into the city's rhythm. In the years that followed, strange things happened to the springs. Bath attendants noticed the suburban baths' pools warming beyond comfort. White mineral crusts formed overnight on marble rims. Farmers complained that the Sarno's water tasted metallic, and fishermen swore eels surfaced belly-up on windless mornings. At the villa of Diomedes, servants reported bubbles rising in the cistern, tiny bursts that carried the scent of burnt match heads. Priests declared the springs sacred to Vulcan and staged extra rites, casting live fish into bonfires so the god would vent his anger upward rather than outward. The ceremonies offered reassurance, but each new bubble, each sulphur-laden breeze, knotted another thread in the fabric of dread. Animals felt what humans rationalized away. Dogs howled at doors that refused to settle in their jams. Herds of sheep bolted from hillside pastures, racing for lower ground without obvious cause. Pigeons, once content to roost beneath terracotta eaves, abandoned the city in restless flurries, circling above the bay, then vanishing toward the islands. Old women, who measured seasons by the habits of bees and frogs, whispered that Vesuvius had begun to breathe again, that its breath was thin and searing, fit only for spirit, not men. Pliny the Elder, stationed across the bay as fleet commander at Misenum, collected tales of oddities, wells that dried overnight, vineyard earth hot enough to scorch bare feet, tremors that rattled bronze dishes, yet left hanging lamps eerily still. In his notes, later gathered into the unfinished natural history, Pliny puzzled over the mountain's long silence. "The fiercest beasts," he wrote, "are calmest before they strike." Few on the bustling quays of Pompeii read scholarly treatises, but rumours of Pliny's curiosity spread, carrying an edge of intellectual unease. In early August of 79 CE, a blood-red moon rose above the gulf, ringed by a pale halo. Augurs climbed roofs at dawn, tracing circles in the air with ivory wands, discerning patterns in gulf light no one else could see. They announced nothing alarming. Public calm mattered more than precision, but private diaries later found in the ash record sleepless nights, dreams of black snow, and an unsettling chill, even as the summer sun blazed. Yet markets stayed crowded, taverns boisterous, bathhouses steamy with bodies and gossip. Homeowners patched wall cracks with fresh plaster. Vintners toasted the coming harvest. Gladiators trained for late August shows. Only the restless mountain held its breath, magma rising, gases gathering, pressure ticking upward like a hidden clock. Pompeii stood on the thin crust of that ticking, convinced the tremor underfoot was the same old familiar quiver they had survived before. They did not know the rhythm had changed, that each small shake was now part of a countdown, a drumbeat accelerating toward catastrophe. First light slips across the Bay of Naples like molten copper. Sea mist blurs the distant islands, gulls wheel over water that smells of brine and wet rope, and Pompeii wakes, as it always has, confident, expectant, unaware that every tick of this new day turns the key on its final hours. Cocks crow in courtyards, bakers pull round loaves from brick ovens, marking them with 8 deep cuts for easy sharing. In the forum porticos, shopkeepers lift timber shutters. Sunlight knifes through their dust, as if slicing open treasure chests. A pair of mule carts rattle in from the Nola gate, laden with grapes still cool from night harvest. On the paved street, a teenage slave scatters water to hold down ash dust. No one questions. Yesterday's small tremor was, after all, only another shrug from the mountain. Warm bodies converge on the Stabian baths. Water clock clepsydras gurgle. Attendants stoke hippocaust fires, relieved that last week's sulphur flare in the springs has subsided. Merchants in tow-coloured tunics discuss freight rates to Ostia, while a marble-limbed athlete flexes, proud of the fresh oil on his skin. Overhead, the Caldarium dome whispers with condensation that falls like summer rain, an omen some might call cleansing if they had cause for dread. The forum swells. Fishmongers spread silver pilchards on beds of crushed bay leaf. Cloth-draped barrows offer Syrian dates, Gallic cheeses, perfume from the city's own flower farms. Graffiti artists chalk election slogans beside the Temple of Jupiter. Children mimic them in dust. Near a money changer's stall, a philosopher from Neapolis cites Pliny's latest observations on the mountain, scoffing at the idea of danger. His audience laughs, more intrigued by the juggler flipping bronze coins in the sun than by any distant science. Along the Via dell'Abbondanza, aristocrats withdraw behind painted facades for late breakfasts, olives, boiled eggs, honey cakes, served beneath pergolas dripping with wisteria. A matron dictates a letter praising last night's theatrical farce. Her stylus hesitates only when a faint quake ripples through the mosaic floor. Jugs tremble, wine laps their lips, but the disturbance is minor, less brute force than a cat beneath a rug. Conversation resumes, the steward will see to any cracked plaster later. From the harbour outpost, lookout boys note perfect sailing weather. Merchantmen bound for Carthage unfurl ochre-striped sails. Rowers dip oars in unison, sending ripples too gentle to disturb the reflection of Vesuvius. The mountain appears benign, its slopes softened by vineyards, its summit a hazy blue, no ash plume, no glow, nothing but a single tuft of cloud dissolving in the azure. Someone jokes that Vulcan must still be sleeping off last night's festival wine. Heat gathers. Stone walls exhale warmth. Cicadas drone from laurel hedges. In a shaded taberna, Gamblers throw knucklebones, swearing by Fortuna for luck. Outside, a seamstress squints up at the sky, puzzled by a strange stillness. Birds have fallen silent. She cannot articulate why the hush feels wrong, only that the air tastes like brass. She shakes off the thought. Deadlines loom and clients are impatient. Temple bells announce midday sacrifice. A white bull snorts against its rope, hooves skittering on marble steps already hot to the touch. Priests lift blades, incense curls above the altar. Just beyond the city's roofs, a tremor heavier than any felt since the great quake of '62 shudders through the earth, rattling bronze ribs of wind chimes, sloshing bathwater onto mosaic floors. Spectators murmur, then still. In the breath between heartbeats, silence reigns. A boom rolls across the bay, deep, distant, incongruous with cloudless sky. Heads swivel toward the mountain. Over the crater, a dark column rises, charcoal at its core, fringed with lightning that darts like snakes' tongues. The plume billows higher, shaping itself into a stone pine, a towering trunk of ash, a flat-topped crown of smoke. Children point, dogs howl. Fishermen on the water drop oars, watching the sky darken where dawn's gold had shimmered only hours before. Pumice begins to fall, soft at first, like snowflakes of chalk. It rattles louder, piling ankle-deep in minutes. Roof tiles crack under weight, people shout, shielding heads with baskets, tablet covers, cloaks. Beneath the storm of ash, commerce halts, prayers rise, and thousands search the sky for a mercy they can no longer name. The morning is over. The nightmare has begun. From this moment, every decision, every step toward the gate or away from it, will spell survival or entombment. Pompeii's last day has crossed its threshold, and the mountain, awake at last, will not rest again until the city lies silent under layers of falling night. Mid-afternoon, 24th August, 79 CE. A thunder no storm could make has ripped open the sky. Now the mountain roars like a furnace bellows, and the heavens answer by raining stone. Hour 9, 1 p.m. Pumice the size of chestnuts drums on rooftops, ricocheting down streets in white rivers. Courtyard impluvia that once mirrored clouds fill with pale hail. Fountains clog, overflow, then vanish beneath drifting mounds. In the forum, marble columns disappear by the minute, buried from the base up, as if sinking into tidal sand. Panic moves in every direction at once. Mothers tie pillows to children's heads with torn linen. Shopkeepers wedge shutters with bronze pins, only to watch hinges shear away under the bombardment. Hour X, 2 p.m. Weight becomes the true enemy. Roof tiles crack, rafters groan, whole atria implode in slow, grinding collapses that send shockwaves through adjoining walls. In the Via dell'Abbondanza, a baker, desperate to flee, finds the threshold blocked by pumice up to his knees. He breaks through a rear storeroom, herds his family up a staircase, then out across adjoining rooftops, hopping like frightened cats toward higher ground. Each landing shudders beneath them. Hour 11, 3 p.m. Daylight fails. The ash cloud blots the sun and turns the sky a bruised purplish brown. Oil lamps gutter uselessly in the choking wind. Sulphur stings nostrils, sears throats. People wrap faces in damp cloths and stumble by the glow of burning torches dropped from collapsing eaves. Static crackles through ash-laden air, igniting tiny blue sparks that dance over iron fittings and outstretched fingers. Hour 12, 4 p.m. The eastern gates jam with fugitives. Some drag carts, others push elderly parents atop wicker chairs. Pumice drifts waist-deep now, grinding under sandals like fresh snow. Outside the walls, the plain is an alien dune escape. Vineyards lie flattened, branches stripped bare. Those who make it to the Sarno River find the water choked with floating scoria. A few launch boats, but oars snap against unseen drifts. Hulls grind on invisible islands of ash, and the current carries them back toward the mountain's blazing silhouette. Hour 13, 5 p.m. Inside the walls, animals scream. A kennel chain snaps and dogs bolt toward the gates, only to vanish beneath falling debris. Horses in the city stables rear and strike, breaking legs on cobbles already hidden by ash. Above the din, a new sound rises, the steady hiss of superheated gases venting from Vesuvius. It is the breath of something vast waking fully, and it turns the bravest hearts to wax. Hour 14, 6 p.m. With darkness complete, the pumice fall eases, but only to change tactics. Fine ash drifts in instead, light as flour but lethal as smoke. It seeps into lungs, forms a paste in throats, blinds eyes. Those still outside crouch against walls, clothing pulled over mouths, breaths shallow to save air. In a wine shop near the garden district, 20 souls barricade themselves inside, pouring water over woven mats they hang across the doorway. Each exhale rises as a ghostly plume in lamplight before vanishing into the murk. Hour 15, 7 p.m. Across the bay in Misenum, Pliny the Elder watches the spectacle from a warship's deck, noting in his log the cloud's shape, like a pine tree rising high with a trunk that spreads into branches. He orders the fleet to cross the bay and rescue anyone who can yet escape by sea. As the galleys row toward Stabiae, volcanic ash thickens the air, hissing on hot bronze like rain on a forge. Pliny's helmsman tastes sulphur and beg to turn back, but the old scholar insists knowledge and lives are worth the gamble. Hour 16, 8 p.m. Downwind, Pompeii begins to die of thirst. Rain cisterns are clogged, wells fouled. Survivors chew pumice-cooled snow to wet swollen tongues. Children drink lamp oil before mothers can stop them. Somewhere near the temple of Isis, a priestess collapses beside the altar, her white robe already the color of funeral ash. Hour 17, 9 p.m. The first roofs burn, lightning within the eruption plume spears down, igniting brush and wooden beams dried by summer heat. Flames crawl along abandoned porticos, feeding on pitch-coated ceilings, etching crimson shadows on the drifting ash. But fire is the lesser threat. The real killer is invisible, an approaching tide of superheated gas no eye can see in the dark. Hour 18, 10 p.m. A low, rising roar like surf inside stone tunnels rushes from the mountain. Some think it thunder and pray for rain, others sense doom and run. A sudden blast of wind hotter than any furnace slams into the city, extinguishing lamps, ripping doors from hinges, hurling glowing embers through broken roofs. It is the forebreath of the first pyroclastic surge, yet even this preliminary gust is enough to sear lungs and ignite clothing. Hour 19, 11 p.m. Silence returns, disorienting after the screaming wind. Everything is muted by a meter of ash, soft as down, deadening footsteps, muffling voices. A young scribe scribbles farewell lines on a wax tablet by the light of one surviving ember. If anyone finds this, remember Pompeii lived proudly. The words are still wet when a second, louder roar rolls down the slope. Hour 20, midnight. The main surge hits, a wall of incandescent gas and powdered rock, hotter than 400 degrees Celsius, slams into city walls and flows through streets at hurricane speed. Flesh sears, brains boil, stone fishtails sprawl under thermal shock. People die mid-gesture, limbs frozen in the posture of flight or prayer. In the wine shop refuge, the ash-soaked mats vaporize, the door caves, darkness turns to blinding fire for a heartbeat, then nothing. Hour 21, aftermath. By 1 a.m. Pompeii is gone. Streets, roofs, bodies, all sealed in a sarcophagus of ash, still hot enough to steam when the dawn breeze finally returns. Above the grey plain, the eruption column collapses into itself, sparking fresh surges that race toward the coast, but they find little left to burn. Only the amphitheatre's upper arches poke through the ash like the ribs of a sunken ship. 12 hours, 1 eternity. From the first stone to the final surge, 12 hours passed. Yet for those caught beneath the ash, it became an eternity, a last gasp, frozen forever in pumice, a city's final breath preserved down to the shape of a sandal strap, a curl of hair, the anguish in a clenched fist. The mountain, spent for now, exhales a cool dawn breeze over a landscape remade into silence. Midnight has just passed. Pompeii lies smothered beneath 3 meters of ash, its streets eerily still in a darkness so thick it feels solid. Then the mountain roars anew, louder than before, deeper, like stone ripping in half, and the city's fate tightens to the narrow span of 6 terrible minutes. Minute 1, the wall of fire. High on Vesuvius, the eruption column, overloaded with ash, collapses upon itself. A blazing avalanche of gas, ash, and pulverized rock detaches from the crater rim and hurtles downslope faster than a racing horse. Temperature, nearly 500 degrees Celsius. Speed, over 100 kilometers per hour. It shears vineyards to stubble and vaporizes olive groves in a hiss of steam. An instant later, the surge slams into Pompeii's northern wall, rolling over it like surf over a sandcastle. Inside the city, a fugitive pauses, hearing what sounds like canvas tearing across the sky. He has half-turned toward the noise when the wave engulfs him, clothing igniting, lungs searing shut before his mind can form the word fire. His shadow is stamped upon the ash behind him, an after-image the surge will soon erase. Minute 2, streets become tunnels. Superheated gases force their way through every alley, arch, and atrium. The temperature difference between air and masonry is so extreme that roof tiles shatter explosively, stone facades sprawl like tree bark in a forest fire. In a collapsed dining room, the sudden heat flash fries figs, still sitting in a serving bowl, carbonizing them within seconds. Flesh fares no better. Bodies caught in the open instantly stiffen, muscles contracting into the classic pugilist pose. A mule, trapped in its stable, rears once. The surge strips its hide before the animal can feel the pain. Silence follows, the sort that means nothing living remains to make a sound. Minute 3, the vacuum lull. As the first surge races onward toward the sea, it leaves behind a partial vacuum. Air rushes back to fill it, dragging clouds of ash in swirling vortices that scour plaster from frescoes but leave deeper wall paintings intact. For a fleeting moment, less than 10 heartbeats, the temperature dips, just enough that steam forms ghostly snakes above the impluvia. Then the second surge barrels in, hotter still. In the garden of the fugitives, a father kneeling over his child is already a charcoal silhouette. The new wave sculpts an even tighter shell around their forms, preserving the tender curve of his arm forever. Minute 4, the cast maker. Ash as fine as flour floods every void, mouths, nostrils, the tiniest seams between folded cloth. Where bodies shield the ground, their outline creates a low-pressure pocket. Ash piles up around but not beneath them, boxing them in like negative statues. Organs cook, fat vaporizes, but bones remain nested inside an envelope of settling ash that slowly cools. Centuries later, excavators will pour liquid plaster into these hollows and peel away the hardened mold, revealing faces frozen mid-breath, garments creased across chests, even sandal thongs impressed on heels. The surge, murderous in life, becomes an accidental sculptor in death. Minute 5. Structures. Kneel. Heat and weight conspire. Wooden beams already charred snap at last. Porticos fold inward. The temple of Isis loses its roof in a sigh of flaming dust. Yet some walls stand paradoxically strengthened as molten ash hardens like cement against their stucco skins. In the suburban baths, lead pipes soften but do not melt. Later, archaeologists will marvel that delicate bronze taps survived when people did not. Minute 6. Absolute stillness. The final wave loses momentum at the southern edge of town, settling into a red-hot fog that blankets everything. Then, abruptly, the roar ceases. Ash descends in slow motion, thick and silent as snowfall in a dream. It fills courtyards, levels thresholds, erases doorways. Within minutes, Pompeii is entombed beneath a seamless mantle of grey, its drama ended in an instant of thermal fury. Above the buried city, the sky glows faintly from the still erupting crater, but no voices rise, no animals cry, no fires crackle. All that remains is a contour, the shape of a town at the exact second life departed, streets smoothed, bodies cocooned, time padlocked. When dawn finally breaks, Vesuvius exhales steam like a wounded giant. Ash drifts on coastal currents, darkening the water for kilometers. Survivors from Stabii, from Herculaneum, from scattered farmsteads, stare across a flat grey plain where Pompeii once stood and see only a featureless hump, as though the earth has swallowed the city whole. Most will never return. Centuries will pass, memories will fade, and vines will creep back across the hardened slag. But the surge has sealed a secret below. A city paused on the brink of forever, waiting for spades and curiosity to wake it. And when that day comes, the last 6 minutes will speak again, not with sound, but with hollow spaces in the ash, shaped like hope, fear, love, and utter surprise. For 16 centuries, the city slept beneath its mineral shroud, unremembered by mapmakers, unmentioned by poets. Grapevines crept over the buried walls, peasants ploughed fields whose furrows skimmed tiled rooftops only a few hands below. Then, in a single misstroke of a pickaxe, history's mute theatre cracked open and began, grain by grain, to speak again. In the late Renaissance, the engineer Domenico Fontana drove a water channel across the plain east of Naples. Workmen tunneling through compact ash struck painted marble panels, strange inscriptions, even fragments of statuary. Fontana, practical and cautious, reburied the find and routed his canal elsewhere. He left only cryptic notes in his papers, an asterisk in the margin of Europe's archaeological story. A full century passed before curiosity resurfaced. In 1709, a well-digging nobleman near Pompeii pierced theatrical marble seats, remains of Herculaneum's concealed theatre. Word reached Charles of Bourbon, the energetic new king of Naples. Anxious to rival the Louvre's splendors, Charles dispatched soldier engineers to burrow through the rock-hard lava like moles. Their mission was blunt: find statues, find jewels, find glory. By 1748, these furtive tunnels had wandered north to a rise called La Civita. Here diggers struck softer pumice, and with it coloured frescoes astonishingly fresh, parrots and pomegranates, nymphs lounging beneath colonnades. They had, by accident, entered Pompeii. Unlike Herculaneum's concrete tomb, Pompeii's ash could be scooped away with shovels, opening whole rooms in days. Treasure hunting blossomed into an industry. Early excavations resembled burglary more than science. Laborers scraped frescoes from plaster, hacked mosaic panels into portable slabs, and lopped bronze limbs from statues too heavy to move whole. Fines were lowered by winch through vertical shafts, tagged CPR, Casa del Rey, property of the king, and carted to the royal palace. What would not fit in salons was stashed in the new Real Museo Borbonico, a cabinet of wonders where guests gasped over silver platters and, behind discreet curtains, a notorious chamber of erotic art the clergy begged the king to lock away. Among the royal engineers was a Swiss named Carl Jakob Weber, trained in architecture and possessed of rare humility before the past. He mapped every tunnel, sketched room plans before artifacts were prized away, and argued, often in vain, that entire houses should be cleared from above, not gutted from below. Weber's drawings, preserved today, are the first anatomical charts of Pompeii, arteries of streets, organs of courtyards, nerves of hidden stairways. Where plunderers saw loot, he saw context. News of subterranean cities raced across Europe. On the fashionable Grand Tour, heirs of British fortunes arrived in silk coats, eager to witness antiquity reborn. Sir William Hamilton, British envoy and amateur volcanologist, collected vases by the crate and penned lavish letters describing ruins still warm with Roman breath. Artists followed. Piranesi etched capriccios of tumbled columns. Painters posed elegant tourists among cracked pediments. Winckelmann, father of art history, proclaimed the discovery's proof that Greek taste, channeled through Rome, was purity itself. Neoclassicism ignited, and Pompeii was its fuel. Enlightenment ideals slowly civilized the dig. By the early 19th century, the Bourbon court, sensing both prestige and pressure, shifted policy. Vertical shafts gave way to systematic trenches. Wall paintings were copied in situ before removal. Entire domus complexes were cleared and left open for study. In 1860, the newly unified Italian state inherited the site, replacing royal trophy hunters with professional archaeologists. In 1863, Giuseppe Fiorelli devised the site's most haunting innovation. Recognizing that empty cavities in the ash once held bodies, he poured liquid plaster into the voids, chiseled away the crust, and revealed molds of men, women, children, and even a chained dog caught at the moment of death. Fingernails, sandal straps, the terror-clenched tendons of a hand, details spoke across millennia with shocking intimacy. The tourists who once marveled at vases now confronted humanity in fragile plaster. By the turn of the 20th century, Pompeii had transformed from Bourbon curiosity cabinet to open-air laboratory. Street after street emerged, bakeries with carbonized loaves still in ovens, election slogans on stucco, lead water pipes stamped with imperial seals. For scholars, it was the closest possible door into daily Roman life. For poets and painters, it was a meditation on ephemerality. For engineers, it was a lesson in building with and against nature. Fame brought crowds, crowds brought wear, and wear demanded unprecedented stewardship. Today, laser scanners map every fresco crack. Drones photograph roof tiles no ladder can reach. Organic gardens replant ancient grape varieties to stabilize soil. Yet tension endures between access and preservation. Each shoe sole abrades basalt. Each camera, flash, fades pigment born in a world without electricity. Thus Pompeii's second life, born of Bourbon ambition, tempered by Enlightenment curiosity, and sustained by modern science, mirrors its first, a dance between desire and destruction. Where once ash froze a city in perfect stillness, time now moves again, threatening the very treasures it revealed. And so the resurrected city lives a paradox, both museum and patient, telling its story even as we struggle to keep the words from crumbling in our hands. Dawn again over the Bay of Naples, 2 millennia after ash sealed the city. Sea mist glides past cruise ship hulls, camera lenses click like cicadas on the basalt streets, and Vesuvius, quiet for now, smoulders with the palest thread of steam. Pompeii lives once more, but this third life is neither ancient town nor buried ghost. It is something delicately in between, an open-air time machine forever tugged by wind, rain, selfie sticks, and the ticking heart of a sleeping volcano. Each morning, before tourists pour through the Porta Marina, conservators in Tyvek suits patrol frescoed walls with feather brushes, clearing the night's dust and ants' nests. Laser scanners hum, mapping hairline cracks invisible to the eye. Drones buzz above roof tiles, transmitting thermal images that pinpoint pockets where yesterday's downpour seeped through 2,000-year-old mortar. Yet excavation has not stopped. Along the unpaved Vicolo dei Balconi, archaeologists gingerly peel back fresh layers of pumice, revealing collapsed balconies whose iron rails still bear traces of Aegean blue paint. Every trowel stroke must balance discovery against decay. Exposed too quickly, and the sun that grants visibility also bleaches pigment to chalk. Before global lockdowns, more than 4 million visitors tramped Pompeii's cobbles each year, 12,000 pairs of soles a day grinding volcanic stone to powder. To blunt the impact, new pathways of steel grating now hover above fragile mosaics. Infrared counters monitor crowd density in real time, rerouting tour groups the way aqueducts once rationed water. Night openings, limited to a few hundred guests, trade bustle for hush. Lantern-lit porticos echo with the footfalls of a quieter curiosity. Where spades hesitate, photons dive. High-resolution photogrammetry stitches together millions of images into interactive facades you can orbit on a tablet. Spectral scanners read pigment wavelengths, recoloring frescoes on screen to their original vermilion and lapis. At the cast's lab, CT scans peer inside plaster bodies, mapping bone positions, jewelry, even leftover brain matter turned to glassy spherules by the surge's heat. The dead, once statues, become patients and storytellers in a digital clinic. Vegetation, oddly, is both enemy and ally. Roots pry apart opus incertum walls, yet vines anchored on selected slopes stabilize ash and shield mosaics from hail. Agronomists have replanted ancient cultivars, Aglianico grapes, Apicia figs, inside period garden plots, letting twisted trunks absorb rainfall that would otherwise pool against fresco bases. Heritage wine bottled from these micro-vineyards funds further conservation, a barter Cicero might have admired. Climate change has shifted the script. Heavier winter storms batter plaster, hotter summers bake waterlogged mortar into cracked husks. And then there is Vesuvius. Its last eruption, in 1944, was modest, a curtain raiser compared with 79 CE, but seismic sensors groan daily beneath the cone. Italy's civil protection plan divides the region into red and yellow zones. Evacuation drills shepherd schoolchildren through streets once clogged with chariots. The modern city of Naples, home to 3 million souls, lives within 30 kilometers of the crater, a demographic Pompeii never dreamed of. How much do we expose? When does excavation become consumption? Some houses, once cleared, are deliberately backfilled with sterile soil to await sturdier conservation methods. Others open briefly, then close again like breathing lungs, balancing access with respite. The famous secret cabinet of erotic art, once locked to all but men of mature morals, is now fully displayed, provoking debates about context, voyeurism, and the universal pulse of desire. stand at sunset on Via dell'Abbondanza as the last visitors file out. Wind rattles tethered scaffold poles, swallows dip through colonnades where market criers once hawked garum. Beyond the walls, headlights glint on the coastal highway, and the distant rumble of late-night freight mirrors the ancient ox carts that trundled these stones. Pompeii endures in this twilight, half ruin, half reborn, to remind us that cities are conversations across time. They speak in brick and fresco, in plaster casts of final breaths, in the whir of LiDAR drones, and the hush of tourists holding phones aloft against a violet sky. And always, just beyond the edge of hearing, the mountain breathes, soft, steady, patient. One day it will speak louder. Until then, the task is ours, to listen to ash, to cradle colour, to walk lightly where the past still lies only a finger depth below the surface, and to remember that beneath every paradise, fragile or restored, the earth keeps its own counsel. The records we hold today, perhaps somewhere far away, buried beneath untouched layers of earth, still conceal clues waiting to be discovered, fragments that could reshape our entire understanding of the past. And maybe, through conversations like this one, through each video and every story we share, we can keep those questions alive, so that history isn't a finished chapter, but a door that's always open to new revelations. If you too feel there's still so much we don't know about our history, and if you're drawn to the ongoing search for forgotten stories and unresolved mysteries, join us. Subscribe to the channel and take part in this ongoing quest to rediscover the untold.